Imagine the phone rings. It's a number you don't recognize, but you answer anyway. On the other end is a voice, hesitant and official, delivering news that feels impossible. The person you buried weeks ago was not your loved one. Your real family member is still in the morgue. Someone else's is in the grave you visit. This isn't fiction. It's a nightmare some families have lived. The rituals of death, viewing, funeral, burial, are meant to bring closure. But what if that closure is built on a mistake? The last goodbye you said was to a stranger. The tears you shed were for a life you didn't know. Suddenly, you're forced to grieve all over again, this time with a sense of betrayal. The systems we trust to care for our dead have failed in the most fundamental way. Often it's a daughter, mother, or wife who must pick up the pieces, fielding calls, sorting paperwork, guiding the family through a second wave of grief. This isn't just a procedural failure. It's a story about the invisible work women do to hold families together when institutions fall apart. It's a story of a mistake, but more importantly, of correction and the resilience of the human heart. The story begins in the sterile corridors of a busy hospital. Two elderly women, Eleanor and Margaret, admitted on the same day, similar in age and build, both pass away within hours. In the chaos, a devastating mistake. Their paperwork is swapped. The machinery of death care turns, guided by the wrong information. Eleanor's family is notified, comes to say goodbye, and, through the haze of grief, sees what they expect to see. They mourn a stranger, while their own mother remains unidentified in the morgue. Margaret's family, too, begins funeral preparations, believing they're honoring their loved one. Both families move forward, each thinking they've laid their mother to rest. But a quiet error lies dormant, a time bomb waiting to be discovered. The morgue still holds a body, labeled as Margaret, but it's Eleanor. A simple swap of paperwork has set off a chain reaction, exposing the fallibility of the systems we trust most. The dignity of death is replaced by confusion and pain, all from a moment's oversight. The consequences will soon upend both families' lives. Before digital records and DNA checks, identifying the dead was a paper-based process. A nurse or doctor filled out a death report, which followed the body to the morgue. A handwritten toe tag became the main identifier. Funeral directors matched paperwork to toe tags. If they matched, the body was released. No fingerprint scans, no DNA, just trust in the process and the grieving family's ability to identify their loved one. But in a busy morgue, human error was always a risk. Visual identification is unreliable. Grief clouds perception, and families see what they expect. A single mistake at the start could cascade into tragedy, embedding errors in official records. Fixing such mistakes later required legal battles and endless paperwork. The paper trail meant to provide order could instead trap families in uncertainty and pain. The truth surfaced through small inconsistencies. Eleanor's daughter, Sarah, was handling her mother's affairs when she noticed something odd. A hospital report mentioned a tattoo on the left shoulder. Eleanor never had a tattoo. At first, Sarah dismissed it as a clerical error, but the detail nagged at her. Then, the death certificate listed a cause of death that didn't match her mother's illness. The doubts grew. Sarah called the funeral home, asking about the tattoo. The director confirmed it was there. Suddenly, this wasn't a typo, it was a physical detail on the body they'd buried. The pieces clicked into place. The tattoo, the cause of death, the sense of wrongness at the viewing. Had they buried a stranger? Driven by fear and love, Sarah couldn't let it go. She began asking questions, demanding answers. Her quiet doubt became a vocal quest for the truth. The journey would force her to confront the unthinkable, but she was determined to find out what really happened. Discovering the mistake was just the beginning. For Sarah's family, confirmation meant reliving their grief and facing the ordeal of exhumation. Digging up a grave requires court orders, coordination, and the strength to undo the most final of rituals. For Margaret's family, the news was equally devastating. Their mother had been in the morgue all along. both families' mourning was derailed by a system's failure. The emotional burden fell heavily on the women, Sarah and Margaret's daughter, who now had to coordinate with lawyers, officials, and each other. They became reluctant partners, bound by a shared trauma. The day of exhumation was somber and surreal. A second funeral, stripped of ritual, filled with necessity. Each family finally said goodbye to their true loved one. The mistake forced them to live through the worst days of their lives twice. The system had failed, and the families paid the price. Their grief was compounded, but their determination brought the truth to light. In the end, they restored dignity to those they loved. The case of Eleanor and Margaret sent shockwaves through the death care community. It exposed how a simple error could have catastrophic consequences and became a catalyst for change. Hospitals and morgues began to overhaul their identification procedures. Paper tags gave way to barcode and RFID wristbands, each linked to digital records and scanned at every stage. New protocols required fingerprinting, dental record checks, and sometimes DNA samples before a body could be released. The philosophy shifted. Trust, but verify. These changes built in redundancies to catch mistakes before they could escalate. The goal: make a mix-up like Eleanor and Margaret's virtually impossible. The cost was high, but the emotional cost of failure was far greater. The system now strives for certainty, protecting families from the pain of mistaken identity. For mortuary professionals, Eleanor and Margaret's story is a warning about systemic vulnerabilities. Morgues are often underfunded, understaffed, and overwhelmed. Mistakes aren't always due to negligence. They're symptoms of a system under strain. Visual identification is unreliable. Confirmation bias leads families to see what they expect. The old system was passive, relying on information being correct from the start. The new system is active. Barcodes are scanned, fingerprints matched, DNA analyzed. Each step is a deliberate act of confirmation, building layers of security. This shift moves the burden of certainty from grieving families to objective processes. It's a transition from trust and assumption to evidence and certainty. The result, a crucial safeguard for both the deceased and their families. This story is about more than a procedural failure. It's about the power of advocacy, especially by women. Sarah noticed the details others missed: the tattoo, the cause of death. Women often become the advocates, pushing against bureaucratic inertia to demand answers. Sarah faced skepticism, but her persistence was an act of love and justice. Her advocacy restored her mother's dignity and forced the system to change. When systems fail, it's often women who do the work of seeking justice. Sarah's voice became a catalyst for reform. Her fight ensured no other family would endure the same trauma. In the end, Sarah's refusal to ignore her doubts changed everything. Her persistence corrected a terrible mistake and exposed a critical flaw in the system. Barcode scanners, fingerprint checks, and DNA protocols are now her legacy. Her story reminds us to be vigilant advocates for our loved ones. The small details we know can unlock hidden truths. Every scan and check is a small echo of Sarah's victory. One person's voice can move mountains of bureaucracy. Sarah's fight brought peace to her family and to countless others who came after.